this is both We Are FinTech and FinTech for Good. First of all, round of applause. This is all Z's hard work. Can we have a round of applause, please? Great result to bring everyone here together. Also, to the sponsors, we have Innovation Warehouse, who very generously lent the space, and FinTech Compliance. So thank you very much to the sponsors who made tonight possible. And just a reminder why we're here. So compliance. Compliance is one of those words that are very divisive. We're putting it out there. We think compliance has an image problem. It's one of those words that tends to make people's hearts sink. And what we're here to do today is to take a look at compliance and say, actually, can we help make more sense of this to more people? So that's what we're here to do today, and we've got a great bunch of experts to come and help us think about how we reframe compliance and make better sense of it going forward. So that's why we're all here. Why I'm here, my name is Max Carlis, and my background is in the innovation labs at Lloyds Banking Group, and this summer I've broken free to go solo, so I'm free for parties like this. So can we have a round of applause for our first speaker and his 5 minutes? There are questions allowed at the end of the 5 minutes. Take it away, Rob.
Thank you. Thanks, Max. My name's Rob Evans. I work for Fintrail. We specifically provide financial crime compliance advice to financial services firms. I'm going to try this in this 5 minutes to sort of debunk some of the myths around financial crime compliance. It's a subset of the compliance conversation you'll hear tonight, and ultimately our focus as a firm is actually getting away from the use of the word compliance. We don't actually like to use the word compliance, so hopefully as we go through the next 5 minutes you'll understand why. Okay, thanks. A couple of the sort of key points. I'm just going to reiterate this issue that financial services is based on the principle of trust. Okay, you've got to trust, customers have to trust you as a provider, but you need to also trust your partners you're working with. So it's a trust-based system that we all operate within. One of the challenges of compliance, if I was to sit here and ask you what it all meant, you would also turn around and say it's regulation, it's ticking boxes, it's complying with this, it's complying with that. I'm going to try and debunk that a little bit, certainly in the financial crime space as we go through this. I'm going to talk about risk and the risk-based approach. A lot of people will have heard that, talked about from regulatory perspective. I'm going to talk hopefully about what that means to you as individuals at the moment. And then also focus on how managing your compliance can actually offer more to your business and create opportunity. Thanks. We've talked, or I've already mentioned, that financial services is a trust-based system. Ultimately, if you have a breakdown in trust, it becomes extremely complicated. You only need to look at some of the news stories around things like breaches in Tesco's, for example, in the last week's great example from a cyber perspective. But that trust is really important. And ultimately, when you're starting a new enterprise, a new business in financial services, ultimately building that trust is probably the most complicated thing for you. How do you get your customers to trust you with their data and their banking provisions? It's a very difficult thing to achieve, but it's exceptionally easy to lose it. And ultimately, compliance and risk management are some of those components that actually help you avoid losing that trust. So hopefully at the end of this, you'll find that it's an important thing for you. Thanks. I've mentioned already, I think you'll find tonight as we talk, and I think we had a quick prep session a day or two ago, where we talked about what do we all think of the word compliance. And I think you'll find there's probably some slightly different perspectives on the panel, which is quite interesting. I think from our perspective when it comes to financial crime, we're probably more focused on the operational aspects of compliance. Yes, there are regulations there and they're there for a reason, right? And it's really, really important to make sure you comply with those. But equally, making that operational and making sure that that adds value to your business and your proposition is really important. And I think that is where good compliance and debunking these issues of people hating compliance and getting scared of the term becomes really important. Thanks so much. You may not be able to see it. Some of you have probably seen it on LinkedIn actually in the last few days. But this is a great example of where getting your financial crime risk management and compliance right adds a lot of value. Okay, this is a great example. You've got a potential customer for Monzo, CEO of Monzo is on the right of the picture, where they are onboarding themselves onto the Monzo app. And it took 28 seconds for them to go through the compliance process, AML and KYC process. Now compare that to a lot of the traditional banks that you may be dealing with. And yes, technology is at the heart of that, but equally so is really good understanding the risks that you might face and how you build that into the product and how you develop it. And actually, if you look on the right, you can see that you get a lot of customer satisfaction. That customer experience can be improved and actually offer you a way of marking your product out over other products. So there you go, as an example that actually good compliance and risk management becomes a business enabler and not something you should be scared of. Thanks. Next one. You'll have heard this again. You may have heard it if you looked at regulation. Risk-based approach is something that's really important, actually, and something that we as a firm are probably focused on the most. And that is actually really, in simplistic terms, is about making sure you, as whether you're developing a product or you're selling something to providers, really understand the risk from a financial crime perspective, the risks that are in your product, maybe the market you operate in. And if you actually spend the time understanding those risks, actually what that means is that you can put mitigations in place for those risks that are far more effective and far more efficient. And ultimately, if you embed that into your DNA, it's critical, and that is what will offer you a really competitive advantage. I heard the buzzer. One more slide. Okay, I've talked about creating opportunity, okay? Ultimately, you'll see a little quote there, high risk isn't always bad risk and low risk isn't always good risk. That is what you should base your business philosophy on, right? It is not always possible to minimise financial crime risk to zero. But what you need to do is understand that risk and make sure you have mitigations that are in place to actually manage it effectively. Do that, and actually there's a lot of revenue to be found in higher risk business. You cannot operate a financial services firm without carrying some risk, but you need to control it and manage it. Hopefully, as we talk through the panel, we'll bring out exactly how you do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, at this point,
are there any questions? So after each 5-minute intro, there is an occasion for a couple of quick questions.
Yes, all these clients you're taking on in 28 seconds, that's enhanced due diligence, yeah?
So, no, that's the onboarding KYC process.
So the AML
So, AML
side?
side, yes.
So it's enhanced due diligence, yeah?
So, no, so, enhanced due diligence, I'm going to probably bore everyone to death now. Right, enhanced due diligence will come in depending on the risk that customer poses to you. So,
I would suggest that JMLSG guidance would be enhanced due diligence straight away because you haven't had sight of it.
oh, yes. So, in non-face-to-face scenarios, yes, you would classify them as a high risk. Sorry?
You signed on to an act.
Yeah. Yeah, so there will be elements of due diligence, enhanced due diligence that goes on in the background, yes. So they will be onboarded with a restricted account to start with.
Restricted to what? Not doing it.
Yeah, so they'll apply limits to the accounts.
You can't do anything. You can't have a business relationship with the client.
Well, that is an example of where they are doing that.
So I would suggest that's not within the JMLSG guidance.
Well, it's a good point, but from the perspective of risk-based approach, again, they are onboarding, KYCing, they are doing an element of enhanced due diligence as they go through and after the process. They are applying limits to control the relationship. So based on the risk assessment, that is proportionate.
Yes, a possible idiot question, since this is just a very, very initial introduction, the KYC, which is supposed to be so fast. We are actually at the stage where they are acquainted with each other. They are already face-to-face, and they are possibly discussing a way of progressing forward, right?
Potentially, yes.
So
Hasn't this actually already happened?
The face-to-face element, do you mean? Yeah, and they're applying other alternatives to the face-to-face engagement. So potentially, a call, Skype, that type of thing has been applied as well. But I use that as an example, okay, of how ultimately streamlining your financial crime compliance controls gives you the ability to bring additional customer experience and enhancement. I don't want to pick apart their particular business model because I don't think it's appropriate, but ultimately, what I'm saying is that you can create additional traction, you can build trust with your customers by getting some of those compliance components correct in the first place. Okay.
At this point, I think we're going to have to move on to the next one. Rob will be available, and we can lock you and him in the glass-walled room at the back to sort this out once and for all, if that's necessary. Can we have a round of applause, please, for Rob, our first speaker? Fantastic.